Welcome to Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It, the podcast where we dive deep into the journey from vision to reality. I'm Kelly Jackson, your guide on this path of self-discovery, transformation, and intentional living. Here, we explore everything from mindset shifts and personal growth to spiritual alignment and entrepreneurship, sharing insights, stories, and actionable wisdom to help you live a life in harmony with your dreams. Every episode will dig into what it means to not only dream big, but to actually consciously create the life you envision. Let's turn your dreams into real life. Before we begin, let's land for a moment. You showed up today because part of you is turning toward truth, expansion, and alignment. Sunday Spark is my weekly email created for the ones who are ready to live life in full ownership, to build in rhythm and grow from a place of ease. Each letter includes insights, activation prompts, and practical tools woven through my holistic trifecta, which is optimal health, positive relationships, and wealth building. And the best part? It's only 45 to 90 seconds to read. It's a quick spark, a gentle activation, something you can carry into your week. If you want that kind of moment in your inbox every Sunday, you're invited. Sunday Spark is there. It's ready when you are. The link to join is in the show notes. Hello and welcome back to the show. We've got a very special guest today. I'm super excited to have Breaux on. You are probably familiar with this name if you are from Louisiana, if you're from down south, if you love gymnastics, if you love collegiate sports. You have heard her name. 43 years as the gymnastics coach, the women's gymnastics coach at LSU. And recently, she had the huge honor of having the SEC Network ask her, can we do your life story? Like, this is huge. And they did. They documented this. It's called The Fighting Tiger. And I just watched The Fighting Tiger. It is amazing. And what stood out to me, other than the success, was the longevity. 43 years in one role. It's like a lifetime in one role. And so I want to start there. Before the titles, before the wins, who were you when you first stepped into coaching?
When I stepped into, well, first of all, Kelly, thanks for having me. And Kelly and I met in a parking lot at the United Way ribbon cutting event, which was pretty exciting for United Way and, of course, for this multi-parish area that our United Way serves. But my beginning, my start, I grew up in Donaldsonville, and the chapters that happened in my life that brought me to LSU was a phone call, sitting on with my parents, sitting with my dad, having coffee one morning. The phone rang, and I picked up the phone and was talking to this gentleman. And yes, sir. Well, but I've already signed a contract to work at St. Joseph Academy. Yes, sir. That kind of deal. Well, okay, I'll call you back. Hung up the phone, and my dad was like, "Who was that?" I said, "Well, that was Mr. Carl Maddox. He's the athletic director at LSU." And my daddy goes, "And so you signed a contract to be a teacher at St. Joseph Academy while somebody's pregnant. You have no, there's no vision beyond that." I said, "Well, I'm coaching for Breaux, and I'm, running a little gymnastics program to put myself through grad school." But I said, "Well, Dad, that's kind of it. That's." He said, "Okay, look, LSU gymnastics, St. Joseph's Academy." He said, "Call the man back and tell him you'll go interview for the job." So I did, and I interviewed with Pat Newman, who was at LSU, she was a tennis coach, but she was also the coordinator of women's sports. Now, we couldn't call her an assistant athletic director because she was a woman, and this was 1977. So I interviewed with Pat, and she had, I think she'd interviewed 2 gentlemen before me, and she offered me the job. So I took the job, had no facility, no budget, no equipment, a couple of scholarships. There were some athletes because we had a club sport before, and this was the year we had women's basketball was a sport, a varsity sport, and volleyball was a varsity sport, and they were going to make gymnastics a varsity sport. So I started with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, a lot of eagerness, and then when I kind of opened the book, it was full of blank pages. So that's how I got started. Carl Maddox and Pat Newman and my dad sitting on our pool deck drinking coffee.
Okay, so Dad asked you, when he asked you to look at your 2 opportunities here, he said St. Joseph's is a pregnant teacher with no real future vision, and then he presented LSU. Mm-hmm. So at that time, did you know going into it, this is going to be a career for me, or is that something that you realized over the years?
No, I wanted it to be a career. I knew that, when I graduated from high school, when I was in high school, I went to Southeastern and trained with the Olympic coach. He was a coach there. And they had a team. LSU did not have a program at all at the time. And I first started by commuting from Donaldsonville to Baton Rouge. 1 day a week, then 2 days a week, then 3 days a week. And, back then, I-10 was a vision, and there was no Sunshine Bridge and no new bridge in Baton Rouge. So it was taking the ferry and riding the river road. But it was a price that my mother was willing, distance she was willing to go. But so I went from that and then left that program and went to Hammond. And as a high school student, I was able to compete for Hammond for Southeastern because it was a club there with a great coach and a great program. So I had some incredible opportunities offered. So when I finished high school, I went right into college and had an injury in '72 during the Olympic trial process. It was a long, dubious process at the time. And my coach said, well, you're not going to not do anything. You're going to help me coach. So I started helping him coach. And so I really enjoyed that. I thought I would go to physical therapy school. I was very interested in a postgraduate program. And that didn't happen because I ended up transferring from Southeastern to LSU. Had a brother that was in an industrial accident, and he was at Our Lady of the Lake Hospital, and there was really no hope. Where there's life, there's hope, but there was truly no vision that he was going to survive this thing. And at that time, I went and pulled myself out of Southeastern, transferred to LSU, so I'd be closer to home in case he did live. I could, help my parents because 8 kids, and I had 2 older siblings, and they were both in college and couldn't. But I had the opportunity. I could be a little closer to home, and 5 siblings and some really young ones at home. So I found myself at LSU with no job, nothing. I just transferred. So I started coaching and teaching gymnastics. I was the first person that served as the state director for gymnastics, kind of monitoring and helping people get gymnastics programs off the ground, and got certified as a national level judge. I was doing a lot of judging and to make some money. And the opportunity, I was graduated and then just went on to graduate school because there was nothing else. What am I going to do? So I was going to stay here and nurture this gymnastics thing I had going and continue to judge. And I get that phone call. So, and the rest of it, those chapters built me to where I am now. And there's a whole lot that happened between my saying, yes, sir, I'll take the job, and retiring during COVID.
Well, yeah. I want to backtrack a little bit because there was something that you said in there, and I have a question because you dealt with this undoubtedly as a coach. So I want you to speak a little bit on your experience when you had your injury. So you were on the Olympic path, and then you had an injury that really changed the course for you. Now, the path you ended up on obviously was an amazing path. Mm-hmm. However, it's not the one that at one time you were focused on, dreaming of, and working towards. And so I know as a coach, you've had your athletes who have had their own injuries. What was that like for you at the time when you had your injury? And then we'll get into later kind of how you deal with that as a coach. We'll talk about how you hold the emotional weight of carrying all your athletes.
Well, at the time that I had it was a knee injury, and at the time that it happened to me, it's pretty much career ending. It was at the time. But the injury then was first a torn cartilage and then a torn ACL. And trying to come back from the cartilage and coming back from that and then the ACL going in the same leg, it was devastating. That was really, really rough. But it was truly a life lesson because you know that door shuts and another one opens. So I really took advantage of the door that was opened and the opportunity. And Coach Edwards let me travel with his team at Southeastern, even when I was a student at LSU, to judge. So I had the opportunity to do some international things with that team, and before that even to compete internationally with that program. But the other door opened, and after I recovered and my knee was okay enough that I could just lead a normal life. But then you start coaching kids and you realize that the resources that we had at LSU for the men were pretty good resources, but there were a lot of closed doors and things that we couldn't access a level of treatment that they were getting and the level of treatment the men and the level of treatment that we were getting. So that was an uphill battle as well. And I can tell you, Brent Bankston, Dr. Bankston here in Baton Rouge, was a real game changer for me as far as being able to take care of my athletes. And I don't think the kids ever realize the battles and the fights. And I've gotten emails and text messages from some of my former athletes and said, hey, remember when this happened? Remember when you went with me and we couldn't get in the training room because they were going out to watch be part of the men's basketball game, and they wouldn't even look at my injury. And of course I remembered that, but that's not the kind of things you're gonna dwell on. So that was way in the back of my mind, and then she brought that back up. But I talked about Brent Bankston being a game changer. I knew Albert Bankston, who was Brent's dad, Baton Rouge Printing, and did some fishing with him, and we were good friends. And he said, hey, you're going to Indianapolis for the World Championships. Look for Brent. He's going to be on the floor. He was doing his post work for orthopedics there in Indianapolis. And I said, I will. So I saw him on the floor, and I talked to him, and we chatted back and forth, and I talked to Kelly, his wife, and I knew Kelly because she had done gymnastics. Well, fast forward that a little bit, and he comes back to Baton Rouge, and he works 2 afternoons a week or 2 half days at the LSU Student Union. So I seized the opportunity to start bringing my athletes over there to see Dr. Bankston at the LSU Student Union, and they would send $5. I think they charged like $5 or something. It was ridiculously inexpensive, and the athletic department kept getting these bills from the student infirmary. And so athletic director called me in and said, why do we keep getting these bills from gymnastics at the LSU infirmary? I said, well, to be perfectly honest, I'm taking my student athletes over there to see Dr. Bankston. Brent Bankston's over there 2 afternoons a week. And he said, well, if you do that, a lot of other coaches are going to start doing that. I'm like, well, if it's good enough for me, it's probably good enough for everybody. And he said, well, I'm going to look into this. Next thing I know, he had called Brent, and now Brent had became one of the athletic doctors, and become a team doc. And he worked with all of the student athletes, but they brought him over to the athletic department and expanded that, which became impactful for not just gymnastics, but for everybody. So, that's the kind of stepping stones, that's the kind of victories, I think, that were very important to me moving through my career at LSU.
So I have a question. At that time, you mentioned at some point, there was treatment available, but it wasn't accessible to the women. At this point, when they brought the Dr. Bankston over there, was now he was available to all the teams, but did you have access to him?
Everybody? Everybody. Good. Yeah, because he was already seeing the gymnastics team. So, we were going in to see him. So then all of a sudden, well, the basketball kids, Sue Gunner's kids were in there, seeing Brent and the trainers at LSU, opened their arms, opened their door to him because he was young and vibrant and enthusiastic, and he loved the kids, and the kids loved him, and of course the coaches related to him really well, and it was a win for everybody. And the athletic director had a personal relationship with his family, and that just made it that much better. So, a lot of times we didn't have to go to a doctor's office somewhere and wait and wait and wait and then be told, well, the doctor's not going to see you today. He's going someplace. He just left. And that happened multiple times. So, taking the student athletes and being able to just get served right there at LSU was a real bonus for everybody.
Yeah, it makes it more of a complete package.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure one of the things I love that you talked about in your documentary, and for this reason too, when y'all are recruiting, I'm sure this is also so important when you got to add that to the things that your team has access to, the facilities,
great medical care,
the whole team. It's not just one. Y'all have got a mental health department. Y'all have got somebody.
We didn't always have that. We didn't always have the counselors and the mental health thing, and that's been a real bonus. And Shelly Malinex, who was a trainer at LSU, I got to give her some kudos for that, because she really was instrumental in strong-arming and getting a staff together over there that is multifaceted, and a staff that works very hard in all aspects of the student athlete's wellness. And it took the pressure off of the coaches. I know it took the pressure off of me. I didn't have to deal with all of these issues and all of this clutter and everything, and all of a sudden I could just focus on coaching. But Shelly, is another person I think that really helped turn some corners at LSU. Not just for one group, and she was a very football centric. She came in with Marucci, with Jack Marucci, and but she saw the big picture and really focused on every aspect of the student athlete's wellness. And that's what she does now. She's no longer a trainer, but she's over the entire spectrum of taking care of our LSU athletes. She's amazing.
She is amazing. I've had Shelly on as a guest, and I love it. And she's had a long career like you at LSU. And so I want to ask you, since we're speaking of long careers, 43 years in the same role, what has that taught you about people?
Oh, that they come and go. It's kind of a revolving door, and I knew that when someone was coming into the life of the program and were not very supportive or not very positive, and wasn't uplifting, and they were kind of doing everything they could to hold us down. Because early on, the feeling was whatever we give to these women's sports is taken away from the men, which wasn't the case. It's not what was happening, because they weren't suffering because we were there, but that was how they felt. So there wasn't a whole lot of open arms and hugging and like, oh, kumbaya, we're so glad y'all are here. We needed this. But eventually that changed. That began to change, and I think it's because of what the women program and the women athletes, but what we brought to the table, and all of a sudden you've got some women programs that are thriving and doing well. So there was a revolving door of administration, of administrators, and the coaches. A lot of our coaches had a lot of longevity. A lot of our coaches, Sue Gunner stayed until she couldn't coach anymore. Karen Bonson, she was hired as soon as she got out of just graduated from LSU, and had a very long and very successful career as our women's golf coach. So our women came and really did a good job. Look at our track program. Pat Henry was there, and he produced such an incredible program through his legacy that and then he couldn't get what he wanted from the administration here, so Texas A&M grabbed him up. But now we have Dennis Schaefer, who has had tremendous career. So we've had some great coaches. Skip Bertman, baseball coach, when he came, real game changer.
Yeah. Well, you're included in that list.
Well, I hope so.
You are. Okay, so let me ask you this. So when you think of the thousands of athletes that you've coached in your career, and what would you want them to feel about their time in your presence? Like, what do you want them to remember about how they felt being in your presence?
Repetition is good, and everything counts. Everything you do counts. How you walk into a classroom, how you represent yourself is a reflection of the team. How you come to practice, how you treat your body, how you prepare for the upcoming competition, how committed. I want them as committed as I was or I am. And I think that made me a pusher. That made me a hard driver. That made me kind of coaching kind of like Nick Saban, coaching hard, but wanting results and wanting the very most out of the athletes. And I gave it my very, very most every day I was in the gym. My enthusiasm was always the highest, my energy. I never sat down during practice. I never stood in front of them and lectured. I was constantly moving around and talking and touching and making sure that the assignment that we had was getting done, because a lot of time it was me and one other person coaching, me and one other person doing now what 4 or 5 people are doing as a staff. And then there were some times when one time I came home from the national championship and we had finished 4th, which was a great finish, and I had no staff. I had learned that my staff had been cut. And so that's another long bitter story, but it was those kinds of setbacks, I think, that made me eager and set my jaw and more like, I'm going to be here when you're gone, and things are going to get better and better and better. And it was a long process, but things got better when Skip Bertman became the athletic director.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things that came up listening to. Thank you for sharing that. There's a couple of things that came up I wanted to touch on. One thing that makes gymnastics unique from many other sports is that it's both an individual and a team sport.
Right.
And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because when you were just speaking, that was kind of coming to the forefront for me. And the other thing, well, first let me let you talk about that.
Well, it's an individual sport, but it comes together at the end of each individual performance. It comes together to create a team score. And the highest score you can get on any event, 6 kids compete and you have 5 scores count, is a 50. So you have to think, okay, I'm starting with a 50. Protect it. Don't whack away at it. Don't do unnecessary. Stay mentally on the beam. Stay centered. Stay where you're. Everything counts. And in order to do that, the athlete has a responsibility to eat right, to sleep right, to prepare and not stay up all night, but be prepared for the next day's coursework, because you've prepared up until the test. You don't have to stay up all night the night before. And those were the things that I pushed, and those were the things that were the most important to me in putting the best product on the floor. We always had great GPAs. We always did a tremendous amount of community service. We always were in the community networking and working to get the community, the people that we wanted to come to our events, come to support us. We were going into the community and grabbing them and bringing them in. Those things were important to me in building the individual performance. A tree falls in the forest and it makes a noise, but did it make a noise if nobody heard it? And so that's kind of my thing with my team was, be that loud noise. Be that when you get on the floor, be that loud noise. Be strong, be confident, because that's when your performance is going to be its best. When you're confident, because self-confidence is the first prerequisite to great undertakings. So when you look about protecting that 50 points, And then you go from the individual performer to the team performer. She dismounts, she did a great job, and now she's going to pull for her teammate to do as well, if not better. And that to me is what builds a team. You know, I watched women's basketball last night. Did you see that?
I didn't.
Amazing. We stayed with them the whole time. Ole Miss had their football team in the stands. It was this whole Lane Kiffin negative thing going on for LSU, and they were trying to dump all that stuff on us. And LSU stayed focused. LSU, we were like Secretariat, just blinders on. We just kept going. And then one of our athletes made a critical mistake. She fouled, and then she got a technical because she taunted the person that she fouled. So that was a 7-point mistake. And Kim, of course, I guess Kim sat on the bench because I didn't see her again after that. So she had great athletes sitting on the bench, and she went with another group of great athletes. But those kids fought and came back, and of course they're looking for individual, points. How much can I score? My individual record, my individual this. It's a team sport only, but they're looking for that individual greatness. But setting that aside and working as a team and passing and playing and getting the ball where it needs to be and breaking and shooting, it was an incredible victory. We ended up winning by 10 points from a deficit. Like, we did nothing in the third quarter. It was painful. And then the fourth quarter, I feel like we wore them out. And the Ole Miss was, whenever they're bending over and panting and you see hard breathing and our kids are standing up straight at the foul line, it was an amazing team effort with a lot of individuals playing together. And that to me is a true team.
I love that. I love that story. And I'm going to ask you to do something now. I'm going to ask you to take that beautiful description you just gave of the game, and I want you to kind of use that as a metaphor for your 43-year career. What were there times, I know there were, what were the times that stand out to you where you were like panting, breathing, it was really hard, versus the times when you were in your flow? Like, what were the hard parts of your career, the parts that really stand out to you as like, man, I didn't know if I was going to get through that season. I mean, I knew deep down I was, but it was like a really tough season, because we're all human. We all have that season. So someone like you who has been so resilient and has persevered, and who has ultimately, now you're over here speaking on the other side of it. So if you can go back to that time, because there's somebody that needs to hear that.
Well, let's remember that female coaches get married. A lot of them get married and have children. And being pregnant and having a child and continuing with that same push, that same energy, that same enthusiasm, and you're having a child. And I had my kids in February, which is like right now. Actually, my oldest daughter's birthday is today, and my younger daughter's birthday is next weekend. So to have a child, I literally had babies like on Friday, went to my mother's house for a couple of days and came back to work, and was fortunate enough to be able to find people that came to my home and helped me with my kids. But that's hard. And Fran Fleury knew how hard it was, and Karen Bonson knew how hard it was, and I knew how hard it was. I think, and that's not something that made you want to quit, but it brings you knee walking. Like, I gotta go to practice. I gotta recruit. I gotta make these phone calls, and something suffers during that time. And I think for me, I felt it the year after, when my recruiting didn't go so well, and I had to coach that much harder and push that much harder and teach. And if you're having to teach skills and you have to teach, then you're not coaching, because to teach in gymnastics, you have to break the skill down and go back to basics. And it's a methodical process of putting every piece of skin on an onion if you're going to get that great performance. So that was hard. That was difficult, and I don't think people realize the challenge that, because you don't sleep. You don't. If that baby wakes up, you don't sleep, and you got to get up and you got to go to work and you've got to. So I think during that period of time, and I know that Suzanne Yocklin at Georgia, and I know that Sarah Patterson at Alabama, they went through the same things. So, I would call Suzanne. I'd call Sarah, and we talked back and forth, but you don't realize how hard it is until you go through it and you look back at it and go, oh God, that was a hard. But then you got to go through. They're 2 years old and 3 years old and 4 years old, and yeah. So you live that, but LSU was so good that you could bring your kids with you. My kids came to practice. They'd come to the office, and I'd walk down the hall, and they're sitting on Sue Gunner's desk, eating candy out of a candy bowl. So so those things were wonderful. And Dale Brown knew my kids. He loved my kids, and they loved Coach Brown. So it was so good in so many ways, but that was hard and that was challenging. But the other thing that would make you throw up your arms is the limitations, and knowing that you have driven to Gainesville and you drive up and you're getting out of two 15-passenger vans, and the baseball team is getting out of a bus, and they just arrived and got off an airplane, and they're coming for a practice before they compete the next day. And we drove in, got out of the van, and are going to go compete. And then to get back in the van and drive through the night to get home. So those kinds of things will really bend you, and you can't break from it. You just got to keep going. It was those kinds of challenges, and like I said, it was a kind of a rocky, and up and down, and denial, and rough. It was hard. And then Skip became the athletic director, and I went in one day, and he had been a great mentor to me. And if the athletic director or a minion would say, no, we're not going to buy you new grips, we're not going to buy you, but you're over your budget, you can't get a new leotard, whatever, I'd go to Skip, and Skip would say, yeah, I'll pay for that out of my booster club. Just tell me what you need, do a thing for me, a request for me. I'll put it in, I'll get it out of my booster club. And so then all of a sudden, the great day happens, and Skip becomes the athletic director. That was a game changer, because the trajectory for me personally, because Skip felt like, as an administrator, if you do what I did, and if you do what I tell you to do, you're going to be successful, because everything counts. Everything you do counts. And so I'm like, I'm in. I had been all in with him as a coach with him, and when he became the administrator, I went in all barrels loaded. And he go, whoa, we're not doing this anymore. Remember, you tell me what you need, I'll give it to you. And that was a game changer.
That was the first time you had really felt total support from an athletic director for your program?
Yep. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question then. At that point, you're maybe halfway through your career? Is that about right?
I'd have to go back and look at the year, but it was maybe halfway, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had spent over a decade, maybe close to 2 decades, without the support. So, and you knew this was your career. Did you believe all along that at some point this is going to change, that I'm sticking it out? Or did you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Even before you knew how or who or when, did you have a feeling that one day it's going to be different?
Always. I could not have gone to work if I wasn't passionate about LSU and about the gymnastics program. If I didn't come to work every day with a purpose, and I did. I came every day with a purpose of we're gonna be that program. We're going to be able to compete at the highest level in the SEC. We're going to be able to not only go to nationals but compete for the championship, compete to be one of the best in the country. So I wanted to be prideful. I wanted to be proud of the product that's on the floor, the job that I do every day, and LSU. and there were some aspects and some things about LSU that I could not be proud of. So I had to keep working and keep driving towards that. And there were some people along the way. Pat Newman, who paid the ultimate price. She stood up to him. She fought him. Athletic directors changed, and she lost her job. And she really went to bat, not just for gymnastics, but she was also the tennis coach. She worked the concession stand. She collected tickets. She drove the vans when she had to. I mean, not only was she coaching the tennis team, but she was multiple hats. She was amazing, truly amazing. And that was kind of just overnight, just taken away from her. And then Bill Bankhead, Dr. Bankhead, who passed away just recently, and he saved the program twice. I get a phone call one day, and it was from Pat Newman. She said, "Dee Dee, don't come across the street. Don't answer your phone. They're going to call you. They're going to want you to come across the street. They want to drop your sport." And I'm like, "Whoa." She said, I'm just telling you this. Don't answer your phone. Don't come across the street if they come to get you." I'm like, okay. I went down the hall to see Bill Bankhead because he loved gymnastics. He had been the original gymnastics coach. He was the big kahuna of I hate minor sports, but he really, when he first came to LSU, he started in the mural sports office, mm-hmm. and he was the club sport guy, and he incubated these sports and protected them and gave them a start. Every sport, gymnastics, tennis was a club sport. I mean, swimming. That's where our varsity sports came from. And gymnastics was his baby. And I went to see him, and he's like, I said, "Bill, I just got the strangest phone call from Pat." I said, she was upset. And I told him what was said, and he says, "They don't drop your sport. It'll be over my dead body." Whoa. This is what I needed to hear. So he said, "You just go to practice. You go do your job." So I left, and of course I never got the phone call. I never got called across the street. But about 4 days later, all the gymnastics, we didn't have a facility. We had a space in the field house. Ernie Hill and Kathy Hill, but Ernie ran the field house, and he said, "I'm going to give you a space." Remember I said earlier that I didn't have a facility mm-hmm. or anything. They wanted me to go to that old women's gym, which was condemned. I said, "I'm not going to go over there. I'm not. And he said, "Don't worry, we'll find you a spot." So they found me a space in the field house. And, a little space became a bigger space, a bigger space, a bigger space. And football used to go in there in inclement weather. That was their indoor facility. It was our indoor tennis facility. It was our indoor track facility. And now you have gymnastics equipment strewn all in front of the bleachers. So anytime we had an event, they had to pick up the equipment. It was awful, but it was the best we had, and I'm a firm believer in making the best of a bad situation. I could make them, if they gave me crumbs, I acted like they gave me a loaf of bread. "Thank you so much. This is wonderful." But it was that moment when we get called in. We had a men's program at the time. So I went because I knew we had saved the program. So we went over there, and we're sitting down, and the athletic director looks at us and says, "Right now, as we speak, all of that gymnastics equipment in the field house is being dumped in the men's gymnastics facility," which was really small just for the men by itself. Now you're going to put all the women equipment in there. And so that was like, we looked at each other and went, "Oh, shit. This is really bad." And we didn't always get along, this guy and me. But the athletic director, he said, "You know what? Y'all aren't going to be fighting with me anymore. Y'all can fight with each other." And he looked at him and he said, "Y'all can battle it out." And he said, "And you know what? I'm putting my money on her." And I was the last person standing. He was a little older than I was, and he had a different work ethic, and he was a great coach and had done some great things, and actually he's just got inducted into our Hall of Fame, Athletic Hall of Fame, in the last cycle ago. But anyway, I survived, and then in comes yet one more athletic director, and it was my third athletic director, and he is going to drop gymnastics. And once again, someone went in and fought this battle and said, no, we're not. And they ended up dropping the men's program because there was no other men's programs in the conference, and they had to travel extreme distances. I think Oklahoma might have been the closest, extreme distances. And and they dropped wrestling at the same time. That was Bob Broadhead that did that, and of course we survived. And then we had all of the women's equipment, and we eliminated the men's equipment. Then we needed a better facility. We needed more space. We needed. I didn't want much. I just wanted more. I wanted what we needed. And
your needs needed to be met.
Yeah, the needs needed to be met in order to compete against schools like Alabama that was getting new training facilities, Georgia getting new training facilities, Florida getting new training facilities, and we're putting lipstick on a pig. So I started advocating about a new facility. We need a new facility. And actually they did some renovations, and they were supposed to put the trampoline ground level, so that I don't have kids jumping in the gym, and it's just dangerous. People that have backyard trampolines, it's dangerous. And I go to nationals and come back, and they had changed the plans, and they're not going to sink the trampoline. We're cutting the budget. And I went to see the athletic director, and he says, well, I really don't have any control over that because Tiger Athletic Foundation is paying to get paying for that project. He said, go talk to them. He said, but don't go over there if you can't control what you say. I went, I got it. I went over there, and when my butt hit the seat, I just went off. Well, next thing I know, they were digging a hole, and they did sink the trampoline, but it was costly. I don't think I spoke to General Richard for like 8 years after that because I was out of control. It was terrible. It was like that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I kept talking about this new training center and getting this new training center, and people would go, "Are we building something for her? Are we doing this?" And after about 20 years of casual conversation with people, they finally decided, maybe we do, because the team is doing better. We're getting good crowds. We're doing everything right. I was able to, when Skip became athletic director, I was able to hire and pay a staff and keep them, which was critical, to be able to bring Jay Clark in and keep him, and Bob Moore and keep him, and Larissa Libby. I mean, there were so many great coaches, but I had to be able to pay them to keep them. And all of a sudden, from Skip to Joe Oliva, we started getting that kind of support, and then building the training center, which was not only the very best and only one like it in the state, of course, it was the only real gymnastics. I mean, Centenary has a gymnastics program, but we're competing now, and consistently in the top 10, competing. We've been runner-up, competing. And so they decided to put shovels in the ground and build the finest gymnastics training center. Only after there were 2 times when a gymnastics training center had been put in verbiage, when we're going to do other things on campus, we're going to build a gym, but it never happened. And so this really happened. Board of Supervisors got behind it, and the university got behind it, and tied it in with the building of the South Stadium, all of yet one more renovation to Tiger Stadium,
right.
Yet one more upper deck, and tied that in, and so we got a gymnastics standalone women's facility. Standalone women's facility on LSU.
And I've been able to tour it, and it is absolutely spectacular.
Amazing. It's amazing.
I was, as my little child gymnast heart was like, wow,
what I could do in here,
right? Like,
and it
what
makes
I
a
could
difference.
do in here.
It makes a difference, and at the same time, we built the tennis complex for men's and women's tennis. And you have one of the things my dad always told us, and whenever I do public speaking, I say this is, whenever we ask my dad, hey, how do I do this? Whether it's fixing something or building something or doing something, he said, baby, you got to have the right tools, and it's true. And the right tools in athletics are your facilities and your equipment and your training room and your doctors and your trainers and your strength coaches. That's your tools. But then also you have to be able to recruit the right athletes, the right people. And to do that, you got to have a recruiting budget. You've got to have money to go out and find the very best. And now you add that NIL thing to it where there's money involved and paying the student athletes and all of that. And it's mind-boggling now. And, you talk about raising money and finding NIL money and finding sponsors and finding this. I mean, it's a totally different coach's hat. And I had one athletic director that said, all I want my coaches to do is coach and recruit. And I'm thinking, I looked around the table and I'm thinking, if everybody in this room, if all we do is coach and recruit, we're in trouble. 'Cause we better be on that street, building relationships, building a fan base. Winning will bring fans. But you've got to create awareness in the community. You've got to be in the community. And I think that's the main lesson, well, from Skip, one of the main lessons I learned is be out there and wear the marks. See, I thought we were going to be, so I wore my LSU pullover with LSU on it because, make no mistake about it, it's important. And this brand is one of the strongest brands, not only in the country, but it's recognized around the world.
It really is. Mm-hmm. And you wear it with pride. And to be able to have been part of that, and you are still part of LSU. You are still involved. It's not like, let me ask you about that. What was that transition like what was the first day of retirement like?
Well,
what did it feel like that first day of retirement?
They gave me a great deal, and our retirement system in Louisiana is fabulous. And whenever I talk to students, I'm on the advisory council, head of the advisory council for the Human Health and Education Department at LSU. And one of our initiatives is to keep our education students in education. If they come to LSU and arrive at LSU, we want to get them started in education like classes as soon as possible. And we had this day, education day, and we invited all the kids to come to the Huey Long Fieldhouse has been renovated, and it's absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen that, cadaver lab and the research and everything that we have for our students is just amazing. It's not just roll the ball out physical education anymore. It's a complete curriculum and so many prongs, so many things that the kids can do besides just want to be a coach. But and I say that just want to be a coach because now you have classes that can prepare you for all of the avenues and all of the challenges that it takes to be a coach or a teacher. And one of the things that I think is so important about what I'm doing now is they offered me the opportunity to be an ambassador, and which meant do everything you're doing, and you're no coaching, no recruiting, that kind of stuff, which was okay because I didn't want to deal with the challenges of COVID. Every day the rules changed. Every day zigzagging. Every day, and I'm like, I'm pretty rigid, and I'm disciplined, and my expectations are way up high. And if somebody's delivering at a 2, I'm at a 10 and you're at a 2, I really have a problem with that. But
let me jump in right here just to clarify, because people may not know. When you said COVID, that's the year that you ended up leaving, to make sure if maybe somebody listening didn't know that.
They offered, to be an ambassador and help, mentor coaches. If soccer wanted some advice, go talk to their team, talk to the coaches. Volleyball, worked with them, talked to her a lot about selling season tickets because it's important, because if you sell tickets, you have a value. If you're not selling, and a few years ago, one of the administrators came to me and said, we're going to tier the sports, and tiering to me that was like the big curse word, and I'm like, well, you can leave me out of that formula. I want no part of being tiering because I have a vision of what's going to happen in this bottom tier. So Go ahead and tier everybody, but leave gymnastics out of that formula, because we're there. There's no men's program to compare us to, So anyway, they didn't tier, but what they did was they took away selling tickets for some of the sports, and now here comes NIL and profit share and all of this, and LSU gymnastics is on this upward trajectory, and we're selling season tickets, and we're doing everything we can to be in that market, and sleeping. I took a weekend and slept in the gift shop until I sold 120 season tickets. I mean, if they mentioned something that I thought was a decent idea or a wingnut idea, I did it, because even if it's a bad idea, it might work.
Right.
So, I did everything I could possibly do. Get up at 6 in the morning and do Buckskin Bill, but which was to me a benchmark for our program. 2 minutes every morning when the kids are getting ready to go to school, and here's Coach Dee Dee sitting on the floor talking to them about exercising.
I love that.
Yeah, and he was wonderful. He was fabulous. And he says, you got to wear your LSU stuff, and you got to do this, you got to do that, and then in comes Skip Burtman, and so I mean it was a whole, like I said, it's like a whole lot of people coming in and out of my life. But the thing about being an ambassador is, and doing the things I was already doing. I was already going to a lot of the suites, visiting suites during every home football game. I was there building relationships. And when they announced that we were going to build a gymnastics training center, a lot of those relationships came to the table and said, count me in, I'm supporting it, I'm giving. And so many of our LSU boosters, big boosters, people that give all the time, but some people that were just one-offs and wanted to give to the gymnastics program. So that was a revelation. That was a revelation when I look around the gym and I go, all these people made this happen, And I told Joe Lee was the athletic director, and I said, Joe, we really need to do a groundbreaking. He said, why? It's already, it's passed. It's gonna happen. You're gonna get the facility. Why? I said, Joe, trust me, we need it, because I've been made this promise before. And until we put a shovel in the ground and TV cameras are there to watch us shovel and toss that dirt, and sure enough, as soon as we had the groundbreaking and did all of that and the big reception and everything after that, people started going, okay. And that's when the real giving started. And Tiger Athletic Foundation was a huge help in that. They were, at first they were like, oh, I'm not sure this, let's steer money. We got this baseball project, we got this going on, and then people would come and say, hey, I want to give to gymnastics. And, oh, you sure you want to give to gymnastics? Maybe you ought to give over here. We're going to do this. And I found out that was happening, and so of course, I charged in and said, you know what? Anybody that says they want to do gymnastics better be encouraged to do gymnastics. Yeah. And the will kind of changed, and everybody got on board. But you look at the facilities at LSU, and you look at our new training room that we have for not just for football, for a lot of our student athletes, but we have satellite training rooms now in all of our facilities. Our training room in the gymnastics training center is amazing. It's awesome. Hot tub, cold tub, I mean the whole gamut. So I was able to not coach and not recruit and focus on whatever it was that Stephanie Rep, who was the one of the athletic directors at the time, but truly was a driving force when she first got here, and she's now the AD at University of Las Vegas in Reno, and we've stayed pretty close, and we've stayed real close because she converted to Catholicism, and I guess that's kind of private, but she asked me to go to Vegas and be the confirmation sponsor and her godmother. So
that's
yeah.
sweet.
So that was very gratifying for me. But anyway, to be able to talk to some of these other coaches about my journey and how I did it and what I did, and they realized, you don't walk in the facility and turn the light on. You got to be in the community. You've got to create some excitement about your program, and I think that we've got some coaches that are really, of course, Kim Mulkey can create excitement in a cardboard box, but she's pretty amazing. But some of the other coaches I think are beginning to realize that they need to be a part of the community, a big part of the community. And if you haven't been to a LSU volleyball game, shame on you. That is such a fast. It's a great sport, and it happens like on a Friday night on our campus, a Friday night before a Saturday football game. And I think the big challenge that they have is creating awareness, because we've got great athletes. It's fun. It goes down to the last ball hit sometimes, and so they're beginning to build a crowd, and they sell season tickets now, and that's really exciting. And then our soccer program went to the run for nationals last year, made it through the second round, and they've got one of their freshman athletes is going to join the national team and go to Portugal, I think, and compete for the national team in the next little while. So that's creating awareness. That's recruiting at the next level.
LSU has so many sports that are just top.
Yeah.
Elite athletes individually, but also just sports in general. It's really amazing. It's
Golf.
not the norm.
Golf.
It's not the norm for a university to have
so many
sports
yeah,
that are
you know,
all
if,
like
if you're like, oh, I'm not
top.
into football, I'm not into basketball, then you've got golf. We've got a great golf program. Our tennis program is now competing once again at the national level. Our golf program is like ranked. Our women were like world beaters, and they're rebuilding. They graduated some fabulous athletes. Now they're kind of rebuilding, reloading. And our men's program, we brought in a new coach 2, maybe 3 years ago, and he's off and running. And, you look at what Jay Johnson has done, and Beth Torino always has a great team. So there's just so many good things. Come out and buy a ticket. Read about it, go online, read about it, and get
tailgating
involved.
happens for every sport.
Tailgating happens for every sport. Yeah. We've got a big gymnastics meet tonight. Oklahoma, number 1, LSU, number 2, at Oklahoma. But Alabama's coming next Friday. And then on Sunday, we have a gymnastics meet that's going to take place in the River Center. I think it's like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you haven't seen gymnastics yet, come see it. It's on a podium, like the national championships are up on a podium. SEC championships are on a podium, so it gives our team an opportunity to get on a podium 3 weeks before the SEC championship. So it's a real bonus, and I think we're going to do Alabama on Friday, and Alabama is staying to get on the podium, and another team is coming in, so there'll be 3 teams. So it's going to be an exciting weekend next week.
That sounds like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention something about gym meets in a minute, but I want to ask you a question first. When I was hearing you share the story about breaking the ground and how you've had to be persistent, you've really had to speak up to, over the course of your career, certainly to men, probably more than women. That was just the nature of where you were working. And the gender equality in the beginning of your career wasn't up to par and all of this kind of stuff. So my question is this: how much of your identity evolved throughout your career? Like, as your career, how much of your identity and who you are today really kind of evolved with who you had to become to get the program to align with your vision that you had?
Well, without vision, you're just surviving, and persistence is such an important part of our everyday life. You've got to be persistent in what you're going to do. But I had to break down the barriers of naysayers, and that was hard. But when I was in high school, I had some friends. We created a youth group for ecology. It was we were 4 people strong, but painted signs. And anybody that would let us put these big signs, 4x8 plywood signs, in their yards, fighting pollution, right there on the river. And if it's things like Mr. Nixon is committing suicide, and breathe in the polluted air and die. I mean, so we made signs, and Life magazine came and interviewed us. So I mean, being an activist and being someone that wanted to make a difference and wanted to reach out, is part of my DNA. And then to have I was trying to build a great gymnastics program by being a state chairman. Each state at that time, each state appointed people to be the chairman. And Vanny Edwards, who was my coach, he said, hey, somebody's called and want me to be the state chairman, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to let you do that. Thanks. So I started, newsletters and that kind of stuff. So I've always been involved and an activist in trying to make things better for others, for myself, for, my team. And so I can't say that something clicked. I think it's always been like that. When I accepted the job at LSU, I had judged meets when it was a club sport. I had been in that terrible arena, that terrible practice gym, and so I knew when I took that job, I said, I know they're going to want me to go in that old nasty gym, and I'm not. So I'm just going to wait and see what they offer me, and then we'll move forward from there. Well, the men had a gymnastics room, and it was adequate, but it wasn't amazing, and it was dangerous because it was too small and you were dismounting into the walls, and we had no training pits. So when they threw us in that gym together, one of the kids' dads said, hey, I can build you a platform and we'll put a pit at the end of it, so it'll be a raised pit. So one weekend he came in with his crew and built this platform, and of course I had to share it with the men, but it took up a tremendous amount of space, but it was worth it because it created a safety zone where we could tumble into a safety pit and work harder, more difficult skills. So I was always, I wasn't one for asking for permission. I would rather beg for forgiveness, especially if it was going to advance the program and advance our ability to be better.
You recognized, it sounds like then, that not everyone shared your vision, and sometimes it was like you knew you would be up against that resistance to
no
get
vision.
a pit. Or
I had something with no vision, and your vision is your footprint, and so I really believe that you have to believe in your vision. You have to, the most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire, and that fire is our passion. And if you're not passionate about your yard, or passionate about upkeep of your car, or passionate about maintaining your house, then really, those are your most important, most valuable possessions. And so you've got to be passionate about that, or it really doesn't matter. And to me, I'm passionate about those things. I'm prideful about those things, and I work with a purpose for things, and I that's just who I am.
I like who you are.
Well, thank you. I don't have a choice.
Okay. I said I was going to say something about gym meets. So one of the things I will tell you, one of your techniques worked, because I used to come to your gym meets in the late 80s, early 90s in the handstand contest.
The handstand the silo handstand contest.
So forward to that. I wanted to win a gym bag more than I can even tell you, because that was the big thing.
You a bag. I wish I
No, listen. I never came close to winning a handstand contest, but every gym meet I went to, you better believe when they said
on the floor,
I was out there. And then when I would fall, I would just sit there in awe of these girls who would hold their handstands for minutes and minutes and minutes.
Well, I would go and get sponsors, and this was back before you went and got sponsors. But Silo was a little electronics company here. They sold electronic stuff, and he lived in my neighborhood. And he asked me one day, hey, what? And he was maybe from India. I can't remember, but I see his daughters now from time to time. But he was like, what can I do to help your program? He said, can I maybe give you some prizes? I said, once a week we'll do a handstand contest, and we'll call it the Silo Handstand Contest. He said, that would be great. So every week he gave me prizes for the handstand contest, and it got to be so many kids that we had to stop doing it. So now I think every once in a while they'll do a handstand contest, and they'll pick 2 or 3 different kids to come down and compete against each other.
I love that.
For the handstand contest. But any and everything, anything, there was no limit to what we would do to get people in the stands.
I have fond memories of going to the gym meets. I mean, that was definitely, as a child, as a young gymnast, it was so cool to go. And even now, I know it's a wide variety that comes to the meets. It's all ages.
Yeah.
All ages.
All ages. But our crowd is a very loyal. They've been there a long, long time, and now we've got even a crowd that travels. And women's basketball, huge crowd, different demographic. Baseball, a lot of overlay, a lot of mutual fans, but baseball happens so many days in a row, or so often and so long. They can go to a baseball game, come to a gymnastics event, and go back, or they can go to a women's basketball game and then catch baseball tomorrow. So I mean, there's a whole lot of overlay, but I bet there's not a whole lot of schools in this country where you can have a gymnastics meet as a sellout on Friday, a baseball game as a sellout on Saturday, and a softball game that could be close to a sellout, and also have a track meet going on where you can't put anybody else in the stands. That is what LSU is now.
Yeah, and you're part of that legacy.
But
Pretty
there's
amazing.
a lot of people now. There's a lot of people that work hard. Like back in the day, I was doing all the marketing. I was in the grocery stores giving out comp tickets. My team was out there giving out comp tickets. And now there's a marketing group. There's a marketing team. But nothing takes the place of that coach and that athlete standing in front of Rouse's grocery store giving out tickets. And it was Winn-Dixie when I was doing it. But touching and talking to people. Yes, ma'am. I'm the soccer coach. I'm the gymnastics coach, and I would love for you to come to a gymnastics meet. I've never been. Or they would say, I'm not interested, and walk away. Well, that would be dejecting to the kids, the team kids. But to me, it was just like, okay, next. And a lot of these people, well, can I have 5? Well, if you give me 6, I'll invite a neighbor. And so we were giving out those free tickets, and the Advocate sponsored those tickets. And people forget that. But the Advocate stepped up to the plate and sponsored, and would put a coupon in the paper. Here's a coupon, buy a ticket and get in free. But it was those kinds of sponsorships, those kind of, not subtle, but bold. They were believing in gymnastics when we were 2,000, 3,000 fans, and all of a sudden we're at 6,000 fans. Like, and here's Skip Burtman, and I love Skip, and he's the athletic director, and now we've got about 6,000 people coming to a gymnastics meet. And he walks out on the floor before meet, we go change clothes, and he walks out on the floor, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, Dee Dee, I want you to look around. You got 6,000 people coming to watch gymnastics now. And I looked around. And I said, yes, sir. He said, I need you to pump the brakes. I need you to back off. I need you to stop pushing so hard. And I looked at him, and I'm like, Skip, I see the 6,000 fans, but you're the master promoter. You're the big Buana of putting butts in the seats. I said, I see the 6,000. But there's 8,000 empty seats in here. And he looked at me and snickered and said, keep pushing, So, it's those kinds of moments that the athletic director realizes the hard work and the victories and says, take a little pressure off yourself and let the staff do that job. I used to do a meet critique after every single event. I'd list all the marketing things, everything that I did leading up to that event, and then the equipment crew, the promotions and marketing crew, the this, that, and comment about what they did, or how the equipment was set up. They they did it really great this week, or they were slow. They need more help. Just a meet critique about every aspect, sports information. There was nothing in the paper this week about this event, that kind of stuff. Well, sports information can't control what they put in the paper. But now you have social media. So, that's a whole different. But anyway, the athletic director would bring that thing into the staff meetings on Mondays and go, all right, we're going to go over this because, it matters, I guess. And then when Joe Oliva became the athletic director, he called me in his office. He said, now, Dee Dee, I understand this meet critique and how hard you've worked. And, I get it. But don't do that anymore. Every person you have on this list, I expect them to do their job. I will know if they're not doing their job because I will be at those events. And he was. And it mattered. And Skip came to events, and Joe Oliva came to events, and Burge Osbury goes to every single event at LSU. It matters. So, the coaches don't have to do a meet critique because everybody now cares about their area of responsibility, and they get it done.
How wonderful that must feel to have that support from the athletic department.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you knew what it felt like to not have it. I
Yeah.
mean, you really have lived on both sides of it. And so I know that you have an even deeper appreciation for it now than maybe say a young coach that's just stepping into their career and doesn't know any different. Like,
well,
you
and
know
you said
different.
doesn't know any different. See, that is the
Hasn't
troubling.
lived any different.
That's the troubling desert that's out there, because
Meaning
they-
so many people that don't know.
that haven't been in the trench. They stepped into that job and have these wonderful facilities, this great support, all of this, and how easy you can lose it, how easy it can slip away. And I used to tell one of my administrators, Mark Ewing, adored Mark Ewing, and he comes to one of our staff meetings one day and he goes, and this is Jay Clark's on my staff now, and he says, y'all need to kick up that opening ceremony a little bit. Y'all need to, give it some oomph. Well, boldness is a key part of success. Success is wrapped in boldness. And so he said that, and I'm like, that was bold. What he just did was bold. So Jay's like, I'm going to call the people that do the Saints opening and tell them to come down here and give us the works. So now we have flames. We have a pedestal that's got, moving lights on it, because one of our administrators made a bold statement and had higher expectations than we were delivering. He was expecting at a 10 and we were delivering at a 2. So we got to bring our delivery up to a 10. And that's, to me, a good administrator. That's what a good administrator does. And but the list goes on. Just being there and being positive and being part of the success, but also part of the slump before the success comes back. That's all critical. And not just looking at a coach, calling them at 8:00 in the morning and going, well, AD's not happy about your performance. We're not sure where we're going to go with your program. Now this is 8:00 in the morning, dropping these kids off at school, and he's not him, a minion, is calling her. And I'm like, she called me upset. And I'm like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. That was a knee-jerk reaction. You'll be fine. Your team is great. Your program is great. So, I mean, that's unacceptable, a knee-jerk reaction like that. But that's not where we are, and that's where we were. That's not where we are. And I think that every coach at LSU now understands their responsibility, understands what it takes to win. And unfortunately, what it's taking to win now is a lot of money to buy the very best athletes. And then if you have the very best athletes, you need to keep them. So how do you keep them? You've got to feed the beast. So it's a monster. It's hard. You got a great soccer player, and somehow she finds out that another university is willing to pay her more money. So what are you going to do to keep her? You got to find the money. So maybe logos on the uniform. Maybe that's part of the solution, because they've got to be a solution. Because you can't raise ticket prices. You a lot of things you can't do, but one thing you can do is appeal to the marketing dollar. Appeal to that. We've got some great sponsors here in this community. Some great businesses, some great institutions that give a lot to support LSU to keep us at the very highest level. And we have to be grateful for that, because we have the opportunity to do things here in the capital city, the state of Louisiana, that a lot of smaller colleges, smaller universities, and other states don't have that kind of engine.
Yeah, LSU is Well, it's a business.
And it's a brand.
And it's a brand. Mm-hmm. And it's one that holds a lot of weight, especially here in the capital city, especially in Louisiana, in the state. It really in the whole conference, in, like you said, nationally. I mean, not just here. But when you've lived here your whole life, I've lived here my whole life, you basically lived here your whole life, Donaldsonville. I mean.
Yeah. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to 3 high schools. I started at the magnet program at McKinley. And then went to St. Michael Bishop. And finished at Tara.
Okay. Well, you did bounce around.
I did.
Yeah.
And then I was at LSU.
So you left St. Michael's to go to Tara.
I graduated from there. I just went.
McKinley had great athletics. They had great athletics for women. They had some super coaches over there.
What stands out to me about McKinley was their band. They had the best band. The pep rallies, their drum major. I mean, it was something. Yeah. It was fun. I want to ask you, when you think now, when you reflect on, even though you're still active, you're an ambassador and all this stuff, but when you reflect on the people that you impacted throughout your career, what is the thing that this is a little different than what I asked earlier, but what is the thing that you really and truly, what's the impact that you hope that you made in the lives of the people you touched, whether that shifted over time or these girls that you spent time with, that you coached, that I know that beyond just the way you coached them in their gymnastics, but clearly you were there for them emotionally. And that's what I want to ask too. Actually, I want to switch a little bit. I want to ask this first. How did you deal with carrying the emotional weight of the wins, the losses, the challenges, the life events that were happening for these girls that you coached over the years? How did you personally deal with, because you're also a mother and you've got your own children and you've got your own life. I mean, coaching was your career, but you also had a life, right? So, but then you had this responsibility of these girls. So how did you manage that? Did you have a support system for you? I mean, we talked about having a support system for the athletes, but like, what about you? Did you personally have a support system?
Well, I think everybody should, but yeah, of course I had. I had boosters that were close to the program. I had people like Laura Leach, who was on the board of supervisors, and I learned early in the really hard times that developing key relationships was critical. That those relationships were going to be the things that supported me. And I had a very dear friend, Dee Dee Fulmer Gilbert, who worked up at the Capitol. And at the end of her life, I became one of her primary caregivers. But she introduced me to some other people that would be able to help me, because she was helping cope with the Title IX issues and some of the battles. And she introduced me to another group of people that would help me and bond with me and become boosters and help fight those fights. And so, me being the fighting tiger is also a part of that is also the people around me and the people, my own 2 daughters, my family, of course, my sisters, my brothers, all of that. But my mother was my Title IX. My mother was the rock of my professional beginning, and so on. And my dad was more of the gentle, hard. You got to have the right tools. But my mother was like, you're going to get out of something what you put into it. So, you see the yin and the yang. But I had a great support mechanism. I really did. And there was always someone within the department, Ernie Hill, Kathy Hill, people like that really believed in me. Bill Bankhead, loved him. People that really believed. Local gymnastics coaches, local gymnastics judges that I helped start their program and their careers. So there was a strong support mechanism. And then, when I was able to hire a staff and keep a staff and not just use student assistants and, bringing in people like Larissa, who had been one of my athletes, Ashley Claire Kearney, who had been one of my athletes, but to have Ashley Natt, who had been one of my athletes, stay. She went to Penn State and coached and came back. Then I was able to hire Bob Moore, and he stayed. Bob was with me for 20 years. And then, I was able to bring in Jay Clark and keep him here, and then make him co-head coach. So I knew I had coached for 43 years. I knew it was coming to an end, and I wanted Jay to pick up the baton and keep charging up the hill. And so he was such a big part of everything, a lot of the successes that we began to have in the end of my career. And I have to thank Bob and Jay for making my last probably 20 years the best and happiest professional years I could have. But I said earlier when I was talking to these little teachers and prospective teachers in my role as head of the advisory council for that department, I talked to them one time about staying in education and being a part of education, being a part of a solution. And do you have any idea how good our retirement system is? Nobody had ever talked to them about our great retirement system. If you're a teacher and you retire in Louisiana and you have so many years, I had 40 years. I retired at 100% of my salary. So things you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't realize that until I was about 25 years into it, and then 30 years into it, and I started getting these things about, do you want to be into drop? And I would, go to the human resource people, and they go, ooh, you don't want to be in drop. Don't get into drop, because your best years are yet to come. So it's that kind of people giving me really good advice. And I had people around me within the department that are getting into drop, and then they really regretted it. Or people that retired, and they retired angry when things were bad. I said, God, you got to wait. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. I'm out of here. So, and I'm so grateful that I had people like Mr. Sotil that lived in my neighborhood, and he'd walk, and I lived in Plantation Trace at the time, and he'd walk and come around the block, and I'd be watering my yard, and and he'd go, now, Dee Dee, I'm going to remind you one more time. I want to talk to you about our great retirement system. He was a teacher at LSU, and then he worked at the library, and then he worked in the retirement system, teacher's retirement system. I just want to remind you one more time. Every day I would get this reminder. Every day he was walking, Mr. Sotil, I know. And he was related to the Sotils in Donaldsonville, so I knew him really well. I know, you've told me, I get it. Only when he was no longer with us did I realize the value of the advice that he was giving me, that stay in the system, and I was offered, go interview for this job, come interview for this job, and that's when things were at their worst. And I would go, and the grass is always greener. It's the same grass. I'd have to fight the same battle if I went to the University of Washington that I was fighting here. So I'm just going to stay here and fight these battles. So I'm not sure why we got started on this. Oh, because I wanted to talk about the teachers, the young teachers, and the people that are in our kinesiology program at LSU and our education department. They need to realize what a great future you can have as a teacher here in Louisiana.
I come from a parent. My mom was a teacher all growing up. She retired as a teacher in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So I know. It was nice having an educator in the family, and I remember being there. You talked about bringing your daughters with you and them growing in the gym, and I know that was something too, just being able to have a mom that was available to you, even if you were doing your thing, you were still able to have that relationship.
Yeah.
I have 2 daughters. That's been an important part of me being an entrepreneur.
How old are they?
14 and 16.
Oh, get ready.
It's been good so far. It's been a blessing. And
mine are 40 and 44.
40 and 44?
Yeah, 44's birthday is today, and the 40-year-old is next weekend.
Isn't that fun? So mine are close together too. Yours are a week apart, mine are 2 weeks apart. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
All right. Did you have anything that you wanted to? Now I want to tell everybody about this, The Fighting Tiger, a little bit about the documentary. Why don't you tell them where they can find it? And I'm going to say this before she tells you that. Guys, it's pretty amazing how they, in 1 hour, were able to really have this story arc that really beautifully, in my opinion, I want to ask you how you felt about watching
I feel
it,
like they were, first of all, Michael Barnett called me and said, Dee Dee, the SEC, ESPN, SEC Network wants to do your life story. They asked this group from New York to dig into the conference and find somebody or something that they want to do a story about, and it's you. Were you willing to do it? And I said, well, Michael, what do you think? He said, Dee Dee, do it. So I did. I agreed to it, and they were with me off and on, coming in and out for 2 years. I mean, a lot went into it. And following me around and videoing me in my kayak or running on the beach, or we just in a parade in New Roads. I mean, all kinds of stuff at the gym, talking to the team. I mean, when I'm removed from that, but they said, will you do that? And of course, Jay's like, sure, that'll be fine. And then actually being in the bleachers, being at the competition with me when they raised the national championship, and we had incredible video of the national championship, and of Jay saying, hey, I'm not going to receive that trophy until Dee Dee comes down out of the stands and stands here with me, because she built this. So I mean, that was so extremely gratifying. So the story, when they started digging, I had a whole chest of memos and letters and things that I wrote and things that I did to present to people, to talk to. I do a lot of public speaking now, and so I had a lot of material. And they said they really. It was hard because they had to eliminate a lot of stuff and stories that I told, and I'm trying not to name names and trying not to shed a negative light. And one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that LSU was in the forefront, and LSU was reflected honestly for a period, but then reflected for where we are and what we're doing now. And I think they did a tremendous job of telling the story, and they were so sensitive, and a lot of stuff got cut, and like Bob Moore, one of my dearest friends, they interviewed him, and he didn't get in it. Nikki Savoy, who played football at LSU, took us on a fishing trip so they could video me with my grandkids fishing. That didn't make it in the video. And Nikki called me last week and said, well, I saw it, but I wasn't in it, But so it was a lot of things that we did, and a lot of things that go on in my life that didn't make it into the video. But I mean, 43 years of my career, and then prior to that, they had to do some stuff and shoot. So that was a lot to do in that amount of time. And it's also made me remember a lot of things, and maybe I look at it differently than I've looked at it. But like the Alabama weekend is our alumni weekend, so that's a weekend that I get to see kids that are young women that I haven't seen. And let's call to mind Jeannie Beadle. We recognized Jeannie Beadle at the premiere celebration before the showing of the Fighting Tiger, and she won a national championship in 1977, the year before. I came in 77 after their season. She won a national championship and never got a ring. Really? Now she got inducted into the Hall of Fame and got an LSU Hall of Fame ring a few years later, but never got a national championship ring. So we took that opportunity to reward her with her championship ring. And her dad, of course, has passed away, but her mom came in a wheelchair, and her mom was able to watch this celebration and watch her get awarded her ring. And that wasn't in the video, but that was part of the celebration. And I mean, the celebration was amazing. A lot of people bought tables and made huge donations so that they could go and be there for the initial showing. Skip was there, and Laura Leach was there, and both of those people were very instrumental. Kathy Hill was there, and her husband, I mentioned Ernie quite a few times, but Bill Bankhead, Dr. Bankhead, was absolutely amazing. And I just adore these people because they were such an important part of my career and me being able to accomplish what I did at LSU, but also my family. And look, here's the deal. I'm giving a big thank you at the end of it And I had 2 pages back and front. And usually whenever I speak, I put it in a binder so when I turn the page, it's in order, you know. So I'm standing there and I'm reading and giving and little sidebars here and there and talking about it. And I turned the page. I reached over and turned the page with my left hand, and I didn't flip it. So I moved the page over, and I looked down, and I'm like, I already said that. I'm like, well, I couldn't. I'm looking. I'm trying to shuffle my papers and find where I'm supposed to be instead of just turning it. So I missed being able to thank my family, you know, how much they've contributed to my success and all this. And most of all, the committee that worked so hard to put this event together. Katie Copeland, who is the operations person for LSU Gymnastics, she worked tirelessly. I mean, she just on purchase orders and this and that and making sure everything worked well and interfacing with people and, oh, that's who we need to talk to. Because, you know, she was my operations person, so she knows how I operate too. Missed saying thank you to all of those people. So I felt like such a jerk when it was over. And so all I could do is like individual thank you notes, and I'm in the process now of writing thank you notes to all of the people that bought tables and sponsors and everything that they've done. But, you know, the whole thing ended, and I'm like, turned a page in 4 pages, and I didn't get to publicly thank the people that I wanted to thank the most.
Guys, this is life. It happens.
It
and
happens.
You got to roll with
Yeah.
the punches. And now you're doing the right thing of integrity. You're writing the personal notes, which they'll be able to treasure those for a long time to come. And I will say, when I was watching The Fighting Tiger, that when she was talking about them raising the banner, I mean, I'm like full out crying when I'm watching it at that point. I was so emotional, and I was like, I even thought to myself, and her daughters are there with her, and I was like, man, how awesome that it worked out, the timing that you had this crew there to document this, because to me, I'm a documentary girl, I'm a videographer girl. I romanticize my life. I think cinematically. This is just who I am. I'm an artist. I can't help it. I don't want to change.
I have a sister. My youngest sister's like that. Yeah, she's spent from Thanksgiving through Christmas into January in Saudi Arabia on a movie. Yeah, so
amazing.
And that's how she thinks. That's how she thinks.
And I was watching that thinking, this is so cool. It was just really, it was emotional for me to watch, because I felt everything that you had endured and gone through, and that you had truly set yourself up for this, you know, practicing the discipline of delayed gratification, having patience, and realizing that your vision was going to be realized, and maybe not on the timeline you liked, maybe not, you know, it was just one of those things. But when it was all said and done, you got to stand there and watch that empty spot be filled with the flag, like you said, that'll be there forever.
Like 2 years ago, I was in the PMAC by myself, and women's basketball had won the national championship in 23, and then there was a big American flag, and there was an empty space, and I took a picture of it, and I sent it to Jay. I said, there's something missing in the PMAC. And so I think they showed that in the Fighting Tiger. But I truly believe that, you know, and I think that eventually maybe now in the next 2 or 3 years we'll have a women's volleyball banner hanging in that PMAC. You know, so I just think it's important that every coach should feel the fruits of their labor and the gratification, and there is gratification at the end of the toil.
Right. And sometimes the toil is just a little longer than we bargained for, but part of that is having grace and being able to be inside of it and keep going and keep going, you know, with grace and gratitude.
But, you know, you've got to be able to
grit.
Persistence. But you've got to be able to find joy in finishing second. There's only one person that left that event happier than you. And I think it was 2018, we were runner-up. We finished runner-up like 3 or 4 times, but we were runner-up. And baseball was runner-up. And I remember being at an event, an LSU event with Paul Maneri, and he's like, yeah, we finished second. I said, well, we finished second, but 2 over 2 is 1. And he went, that is such a silver lining, you know. But it's true. If you can't find gratification in finishing second, then, you know, and people talk about, yeah, well, I heard Mr. Cy Totterich talking yesterday, and he's the one that wrote the letter that was in the Advocate. He hand wrote this letter. It was in the Advocate, and I went to Donaldsonville yesterday to visit with him at the little coffee shop. But he was telling a story about a coach from Donaldsonville that was coaching playing or coaching on a softball, a men's league softball team, and he took the second place trophy and set it down on the ground and hit it with the baseball bat just to destroy the trophy. I said, you know, that's sad. That's sad, because if you can't find joy in what you accomplished to be at that final spot, then you're not finding any meaning in what you're doing.
I'm with you
Yeah.
on that. I get that. It's not like first or nothing.
Right.
There's
I truly believe that kids should be able to find joy in finishing second. Some teams should find joy in making it to the championships. Every team has a level of their maximum performance, and maybe that's where it is. But when we finish second in 2018, I can find a 10th where somebody moved their foot. But, you know, when you lose a championship by .025, that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. Or you lose a baseball game because of an error, you know, that's hard. But when you play it all the way, and you stick landings and you hit your handstands and you're doing difficulty, and you get beat and you can't find it, that's a hard one. But if you can find that little 10th of a point somewhere, I can stomach that.
I have a question that has nothing to do with what you just said, but it came to me when I was watching
Okay.
you. Do you still, when's the last time you just, for fun, because I do this sometimes, just walking in a big open field and you just do a cartwheel?
Oh,
When's the
that
last time you
ship
just did
sailed.
it?
That ship
That
sailed.
ship sailed?
Yeah, I don't walk through a field and do cartwheels anymore. I'm afraid I'll hurt my knee.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. But I
Do you remember what
I
it
work
feels
out.
like to? I know you
Yes,
work out.
I
know-
do.
But
I do.
do you, when you're watching these girls flip? Because when I don't still
I
do
can feel
the
it.
tumbling
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
But when I'm watching them flip and do these things, it's like I can feel it in my body, and I feel like you still
Yeah.
feel it.
Yeah, I will watch a balance beam. And because I loved coaching that event. I love that event. But I can see it and feel it. And I constantly told the kids, and if you see videos of me coaching, I'm like, you look here. You have to look with this eye right here. That's your beam eye, and holding your chest, and right here, and your vision. You see it in your vision, but you have to feel it with your beam eye. And I see kids and they get on the beam and they're not controlling their feet, or they're not. And I'm like, I can feel what needs to happen for that to be successful. And that's repetition. You have to tell kids that over and over and over again, because repetition is good.
Yeah, well, because we're creating neural pathways.
Right,
We're
right.
like wanting to
Yeah.
reiterate that.
You get it right once. That's just getting it right once. But can you do it until you get it right every time and it's automatic?
It's second nature. It's
The
just-
good teams train to never get it wrong, not to get it right occasionally.
I like that perspective. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
When you train to never get it wrong. Say that one more time.
You train to never get it wrong, not to get it right occasionally.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Nick Saban so good.
That's elite level.
That's
when you go into the
that's
next.
the difference between winners and kids that just show up to play.
I love that. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Where do you want to send people? You're an ambassador. What you got going on? We just talked about a couple meets. Gymnastics season tickets, they're still available. What do you want to?
Oh, go watch our softball team.
Softball, okay.
Go watch our softball team. It's fun. It's exciting. If you haven't been, it's not expensive at all. Parking's easy, which is amazing out there. Parking's easy. Go watch our tennis team. They are so talented. They're very good. But softball, you're in there hour and a half, 7 innings. It's great. And the SEC network covers it all the time, but being there in Tiger Park is an exciting place to be. Go watch our track kids. Go be a part. Go walk around the campus and go, oh, I wonder what's happening in that building. Let me go see. And especially on a Saturday, you'll find somebody doing something.
Mm-hmm. And there's websites you can go to. You can get a list of all the schedules of all the events, and definitely check it out. I grew up having lived here. You grew up with your parents going to games. You take your kids to games.
Oh yeah, my grandkids, absolutely. My grandson is a freshman at LSU now. My oldest one, Porter, and he'll call me like day of. Hey, Doodah. They call me Doodah. Could you give me tickets to the baseball game? Yeah, Porter, but you're a student. Why don't you just get student tickets? But I want to sit in those better seats, So I'll call the ticket office. I'll call the ticket office. Hey, I know you have my credit card. Can you please put 2 tickets on will call for Porter? Got it. So I love the fact that my kids want to be out here, be at LSU, and be a part of it. But man, being here, I have to admit, it's the first time I've been in this library. I was blown away. You talk about walking around somewhere. Come downtown Baton Rouge and walk around and come in here. Look at this place. I asked you to talk about this. Yeah. Talk about this, where we're sitting.
So Baton Rouge has some amazing public libraries. And guys, when the tax bill goes up and they ask you to vote for renewing the taxes for the libraries and EBR, do it. Because this is one of the resources. So all of the libraries have maker spaces. They don't all have the exact same amenities, but they all have, to some extent, a maker space. We're at the River Center Branch Library in downtown Baton Rouge, and this is where I've been recording the podcast for the last year since it started. And they have this amazing professional recording studio here. It is like full out. They've got a little separate room. Actually, Dee Dee and I are in the recording studio itself, sharing a mic, but they've got a whole nother recording studio room where we could have been sitting across at a table. And they've got a maker space here. They've got 3D printers. They've got sewing machines, laser engravers, laser cutters. The list goes on. Crickets, heat presses. And this is all a resource. You have a library card. You do a little training, pass a test, take a practical. They badge you on whatever you want to use, and then you can book it whenever the library is open.
This is unbelievable. This is like we have at LSU, and I had no idea what I was walking into. And this is really amazing. And then you showed me the other room, and the windows. I mean, it's just a great place to be.
Yeah. And this is a 4-story library. I've had an art show here before on the 4th floor, and they have this gorgeous, it opens up to the outside deck, that overlooks all of downtown, the Mississippi River. And again, the library wants to help support the community. If you're an artist and you want to do an art show here, guys, they want to help you out. Submit it.
Yeah.
Ask them if the dates are available. This is a resource, is what I'm saying.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
They've got conference rooms here if you want to book them for meetings, all kinds of stuff. Okay, well, I really enjoyed that conversation.
Well,
I'm so glad that we got to sit down and chat. It was a long one.
What time?
I don't even know. But
it's 11:44. I've got a lunch appointment in Sherwood Forest.
All right, well, you got it. You got to hit the round growing.
I got to scoot.
Guys, this was great. I'll link everything she talked about, some websites for all of the meets and events and games and tickets in the show notes.
Great.
Thank you, Dee Dee.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, and go Tigers.
Go Tigers. All right, let me stop it here. Thank you for tuning in to Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It. I hope today's episode sparked something powerful within you. Remember, every step you take towards your vision counts, no matter how small. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please take a second to hit that subscribe button or leave a review. That would be amazing. Or share the podcast with someone who's ready to bring their dreams into reality too. And if you're looking to dive deeper, connect with me on social media at Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It, or at BE_1 what you want. Or visit dreamedithenreallifedit.us for more resources on aligning your life, business, and dreams. Until next time, keep dreaming and keep manifesting your dreams into real life. Love you, friends.